Jerry, I see you. What up?
All right, we got Culture Cast live with Andrew Scott, a.k.a. Drewski, a.k.a. The House Plug.
Mm-hmm.
How we living?
Oh, man, living good.
Living good?
No complaints.
Yeah. Well, good to have you. Appreciate you giving me this opportunity. This is the second interview in a row that I've done where we don't really know each other too well. So like the first few I've done, I knew the person, so it was real easy. But I know we've crossed paths a few times, done a couple of events together at this point. It's funny, I don't know if you remember the first time that we actually chopped it up. You probably don't because I was wholesaling at the time. But do you have any clue? First time I reached out to you?
About 5 years ago.
Yeah. So it was a storage facility that I actually ended up buying.
Nice.
But I had sent a text blast out. And you responded, we chopped it up then. I wasn't even here at the time. I was back in Olean, had no presence here at that time. And then fast forward a couple years later, I reactivated my mortgage licenses, reached out, we reconnected, and rest is history. But yeah, man, glad to have you here. Yeah, let's just get right into it. So talk about, just like your come up, like how'd you even get into real estate? Like I think I have a pretty decent idea, but I've never, heard it from you, so.
Yeah, so long story short, first of all, I do appreciate you, sharing your time as well. So long story short, my journey to real estate was kind of one of a pivot in life. So I had to make a decision. I was going through a divorce. I was terminated from my job. And I was in between. People say they be in between things. So I was in between things. I was in between jobs. I was in between a lot. But I knew I didn't want to go back to the life that I was living, which was really 80 hours a week, 3 hours of sleep a day.
What were you doing?
I was working at 2 full-time jobs.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I was working at Metro, and I was always also working at Dunlop. So I ended up making good money for the age that I was, but was losing my livelihood.
Yeah.
And so with 4 children, I understood that I didn't want to keep giving my life up. I needed to take control. So for me, I kind of had to figure out who I was, like who am I naturally? And so as we kind of said before this podcast, I'm naturally a talker. Right? So that's one thing. But I also kind of looked at myself as when I was younger as well. I always had the skill set of being able to sell things. Yeah. I didn't do it intentionally. I just always had a surplus of certain things. And I understood as a single child on my mom's side, I didn't need it, So if I didn't need it, didn't need to sit around. Let me, make a couple of dollars on it. Yeah. And so I just had this skill to be able to sell things to someone that didn't necessarily need it, right? Or maybe didn't know that they did need it. I also had a skill set of being able to talk to complete strangers and be able to be very cordial and, convene with them. And it kind of be reciprocal. And then just naturally a talker, right? And so looking at that, I said, man, what can I do? I had a couple options. I was going to be a barber. I was going to be a masseuse, or I was going to look at real estate. So it just so happened my dad at the time had been in real estate probably for about 27, 28 years at the time. He had told me 9 years prior to getting real estate, and I wasn't hearing it. I was making $77,000 at Dunlop, 19 years old, youngest person in the plant. He wasn't telling me nothing. Yeah. And had I understood what he was really trying to tell me, I should have gotten real estate. Yeah, definitely should have, because at the time you could have bought a house in an auction for $5,300, $2,500. Yeah. You know what I mean, left and right, and I was making that in a week. You know what I mean? So I fumbled that real bad. Yeah. In hindsight, it's 2020, but I know not to do that again. So I got my license, and what I did was I studied real estate for 6 months before I did anything, just so that I make sure I knew what I was doing. Yeah. And when I green lighted it, that was pretty much it. I knew from my first deal that was 100% where I should have been at that moment in my life.
How old were you when you got in?
29.
29?
Yeah, 29 years old. Yep. I got my license 2 days after my 29th birthday.
There you go.
And so I never looked back, man. Yeah. I only look forward at it at this point and, just trying to figure out how to scale it from here.
So you started off as an agent then?
Started off as an agent, yeah.
Okay. And you were with I
was with Keller Williams when I first came in.
Keller Williams?
Yeah. And I went to Keller Williams because they said that they had the best training in the world. Yeah. So I wanted to get the best training in the world. I didn't tell my dad that I was even in real estate until 6 months in when I was really ready to get my feet.
Oh, word?
Yeah. And I brought him to the 5500 Main Street in Williamsville, where there was actually Marco's at the time, and I took him to lunch. He just thought we was just having a little lunch date. And unfortunately, one of the gurus, one of the grandfathers of local real estate, Tom Kuzak, his school is right across the street, right across the walkway, foyer from Keller Williams, and he comes out. It so happens that Tom taught my dad 30 years ago, right? So Tom comes over and we're sitting there. He's like, "Oh man, it's a great thing." And if you know Tom, this is him. It's a great thing. Father and son in real estate. This is, I love it. And I'm just sitting there like, no, because I hadn't told my dad yet. Like, he broke the news. So my dad's looking at him kind of like, what you talking about, Tom? And he's like, oh, he didn't know. And I'm like, no, Tom, I had just graduated from Tom Kuzak's school. So he was excited, to see me come through after my dad had came through, and I sat front row. Apparently my dad sat front row. Yeah. And he was just like, he knew who I was the moment I walked to that classroom. It was really eerie. Yeah. But for him, it was like, I'm doing it all over again. Right. So he was just super excited to have been able to bring a second gen in. And yeah, that was the moment I told my dad. My dad broke down. He was really, happy, tears of joy. But it also at the same time was probably like, man, I wish you did this a long time ago. Right. You know what I mean? By that time, he had already started selling his portfolio. So it would have been a different situation, man. Yeah. It would have. But again, hindsight 2020.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. So you're 29, you get into real estate. How long before, when did your dad start your brokerage? Or did you, talk to me about just the upcoming of Scott Realty Group?
Yeah, so my dad became a broker 2 years after he got into real estate. Okay. That was what his broker told him to do. He came out of Joyce Stewart's JRC Real Estate. Joyce Stewart is the second female broker in Western New York to open up her own brokerage. Out of that office, she shared cubicles with Ben Upshaw. Ben went into development, opened up CBA Emmanuel, and my dad opened up his first real estate company, Scott Realty Group, as a broker. He brought in some agents, and they've since ventured off into further in real estate. One individual became the commissioner of real estate. Another individual became the state broker for NACA. And so he went in, he retired when he retired as a Buffalo police officer in 2005 when I graduated high school. But then he got bored and he went back to real estate again. He opened up my realty. And what happened was we took my realty. Once I left Keller Williams, 2.5 years, I went over to Metro Roberts. It was supposed to be a temporary move. And I got comfortable there. Yeah. But he had my realty kind of sitting there waiting for us to launch. And when we decided to leave Metro Roberts, he changed my realty to Scott Realty Group. Got you. So it was supposed to be Scott Realty Group, in 2007, but yeah, it became Scott Realty Group in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which probably not the ideal time to start a brokerage.
Hey man, where there's chaos, there's opportunity.
There's that. That's very true.
So okay, so you do a lot, man. Realtist. Yeah. Are you the president of the local NAREB?
Yes, sir. Founder and president.
President and founder of the local NAREB, real estate agent. Last time we spoke, I know you was looking at some development stuff.
Absolutely.
Event planner.
Yeah.
Not by choice.
No. That's why I said
comes with the nature, or it comes with the territory.
Absolutely.
What am I missing? Loan officer now. I saw that. Congratulations.
Yeah, NMLS. Yeah.
What provoked that?
The fact that a lot of issues that I'm finding with buyers, especially first-time home buyers, is just the misinformation. Not necessarily a lack of education, not full-out ignorance, just someone told them the wrong line. Yeah. And if you word something incorrectly or someone that's ignorant to the space mishears it, then it just throws everything off. Yeah. And so, prime example, this is my biggest one. The misconception or misunderstanding or misinformation, however you want to put it, is that you have to be on the same job for 2 years. Yeah. So I have so many people that would not purchase a home because they just switched their job. Or maybe they just went into another field. Maybe they just relocated. And that's not necessarily the truth. The truth is you just have to have a 2 years of working history experience. And it shouldn't be longer than a certain amount of a break in there. Yeah. But if you didn't take a leave, and even if you took a leave, it was paid, we can still wag that. But the misinformation is that you have to be on the same job or in the same field. And over and over and over and over, I'm talking to people that are like, well, I got, 6 more months at my job. Why? Right. Oh, because You've been working for 34 years. Like, never not worked. You're good.
Yeah.
No, that's not what. All right, give me a second. Hour later, they qualify or approved, right?
Yeah.
And it's that moment where I'm like, you know what? I heard this for too long. So I can't correct anyone, right? Because I'm not there for that conversation. But what I can do is get all the information that I can about that space and be able to reteach and unlearn some things.
Yeah.
So that was the intent. I have 16 agents in Scott Realty Group. The other thing that I like to do is I like to ask them, more so for their investors, to give me a shot first before they put it on the street. That way I can make that small pinch. I can't run my loans for my own clients, but I can run them for company clients. So, just figuring out how to make money within the same space. What I understand is when people say that they have 7 streams of income, or that's the goal, to real wealth, those 7 streams need to come off the same ocean.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't need to be 7 seas, right?
Yep.
It needs to be one ocean with rivers and lakes and streams coming from that.
Yep.
Real estate is my ocean.
Yep.
And so I need to figure out what the other, routes.
That's a good analogy, because I'm in the same boat. I did it backwards, where I've been a lender since 2015, and I just got my agent license a couple years ago, a year and a half, and I got a couple properties myself. But like you said, like real estate's the ocean, and then you have things that branch off of that. I had tried to have income streams from here and there, but it wasn't coming from the same ocean. It didn't work,
Right.
because I was just stretched too thin.
Right.
But when it's all real estate, like I'm doing real estate no matter what, and I look at it almost as like, I try and position myself as just a real estate expert. Like whether you need to sell your house, to buy a house, you need a loan, you need insurance, like just come to me. If I can't help you directly, I got somebody for it.
That's it.
The house plug.
That's it.
I love that branding. So what's like doing all these different things, like one of the biggest, I think, struggles is finding time for everything. So like, what's a day look like for you?
It's very unbalanced.
Yeah.
So if you talk to most entrepreneurs, sole proprietors, independent contractors, the whole nine, balance is usually our biggest problem. And we don't see it, especially when you're successful in that space. My day looks like I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Typically, my mind is up earlier, so I'm usually up in bed. But I'll roll out at 5. I'm on my knees praying. I pop to the computer and I go.
Yeah.
I send mass text messages out every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. They start at 5 or whatever, whenever I start typing, but they drop at a certain point.
Yeah.
It's anywhere between 20 and 60 messages to whomever needed to get the messages. And it's not always real estate. That's just what I do early off.
Yeah.
So whatever I don't get done by about 8:05, it's pretty much over.
Yeah.
Because those responses start coming back.
Yeah.
And so I started time blocking a couple years ago, and it allows me to be able to focus certain segments of my day for certain things. But then, your phone rings, you don't want to answer it, especially if it's a number that you don't know,
Yeah.
especially if it's a client that you are familiar with.
Yeah.
So that kind of intervenes in the day. Some point of the day, I try to get something to eat. That didn't happen today till about 6 o'clock. That was my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I guess. And that was a Snickers bar, right? So, that unbalanced lifestyle is very dangerous. And then I said this year that I was going to start shutting down at 10 o'clock at night. 2024, I started shutting down at midnight. But often I find myself waking up 1 o'clock, sometimes midnight. And it wasn't, that's not what I chose. I chose to get in this space so that I would get my time back, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't want to find myself doing the same thing that I was doing before,
Yeah.
And taking that L in life. So I said, I'm a diamond back to 10 o'clock. Next year, I'm a diamond back to 9 o'clock. If I can't get it done in that amount of time, then it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
And what I've learned to do is now choose better at what I'm doing in my course of my day. A lot of times in our space, especially as real estate professionals, we want to do it all. We want to take everybody. We want to solve everyone's problem. And I'm starting to kind of take that cape off a little bit. You know what I mean? Some people you just don't have it to do, And so I'm choosing better my network and everything around that so that I'm only really left with the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
Right? Some people you just can't help.
No,
and I had 2 of those a day and 1 of those yesterday. And I said, I'm sorry. There's really nothing else I could do for right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's been one of my main focuses this year too. I have a Tom Ferry coach, and we've been really focused on time blocking and just prioritizing your day. Because I'm same way as you. I've never been good at it, especially in real estate. Because real estate's not a business where you walk in at 9 o'clock, you got your task for the day, you know what you're doing. 5 o'clock comes, you shut it off, and you don't have to think about work. Like, it's 24/7.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely a challenge, and one that I think will probably be ongoing for the rest of my career, to be honest with you. But I did want to just talk about like the idea of balance, because everybody wants. I think work-life balance is like a super popular subject, right?
Absolutely.
And I just saw a reel the other day. I don't even know who the guy was, but he was talking about balance and just like, if you want to be great at something, how you can't have this idea of you're going to have balance in your life. And I was like, that resonated with me a lot, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs get in this space and they're seeking balance, right? But they don't realize that there is no balance for the first 3, 5, maybe 10 years sometimes, whatever the case may be. And just talk, like, obviously you up at 5, you know, you were just talking about how you shut it down after midnight. So you're up 20, 21 hours a day. I usually put in 16, 18 hour days, you know, and I was talking to her the other day and was like, you know, I get to create my own schedule. I get to, you know, I don't have to call somebody and ask them if I could take the day off. Like, if I want to take the day off, I take the day off. But I also have to answer calls on the weekends. I also have to answer text messages at night. I also have to answer my phone on the holidays. So just talk about, like, especially from the real estate space, just like, you know, what is balance to you? What's that look like?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to agree with that video that you saw. I think that balance is a synonym to mediocre. You're par.
Yeah. I agree.
Par in golf is cool, but so is the birdie and the eagle. Right? So like par, you're just a regular average individual.
Yeah.
And if you absolutely agree. If you're looking to be great, you have to, greatness equates to loss and being able to take it on the chin.
Sacrifice, yeah.
Yeah. So the sacrifice, you know, we use sacrifice too loosely. I would just say sacrifice is loss, right?
Yeah.
And when you say loss, people are like, well, I don't know if I willing to lose.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, some of the most prized things in your life. Are you willing to lose that to get to whatever it is that you want? And most people in their right mind would say, no, I'm not willing to lose that. So let me just go get a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And that's cool for you and that works for you, great. But some people have bigger aspirations, and that is it's gonna come as a loss. If you look at any great person that ever did anything, topped anything, and you know, sports is probably the easiest conversation to have. I know nothing about it, but I can name the top of certain things in certain sports.
Yeah.
And every single one of them took some major L's in life.
Yeah.
They got that one W though, and that's the W that we know them for.
Right.
But where do they stand? You know, being at the top by itself is a very dangerous place.
Yeah.
You know, it's a high place to jump from.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people realize what comes with that territory.
No.
You know, and what that actually looks like. Like, we all only see the tip of the iceberg and all the glory and the trophies and the awards and the recognition and whatever else. But you don't get to see the 4 a.m.s, the 5 a.m.s, the, you know, 20-hour days, the cries, the tears, you know, everything that comes with it. And I think that's where a lot of people lose, is they walk into whatever it is that they're chasing after with unrealistic expectations. And I'm a big John Maxwell fan. He's got a 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, I think is the book. But one of the laws is you have to give up to go up.
Yeah.
And that's real. Like, you really have to have a real conversation with yourself. Like, what am I willing to lose? What am I willing to give up to reach this certain level? So,
and I mean, the conversation is not just yours too to have. It's yours because you're not in the world by yourself. So it's the people that's around you too.
Right.
Significant other, your kids, your family.
Yep.
You know, I have had a real conversation with my family a couple of times, you know, significant other, even my kids sometimes. It's sad sometimes, you know, with my children are 11, 12, and 19. And so, you know, I'll be with my 12-year-olds who are girls, and they call it out. My boys, I think they just kind of in their own space. They know dad gotta do what dad gotta do. My girls is different. You know, they'll say, they're like, you know, could you put the computer down for a minute? I'll put it down. I pick up my phone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think I'm there in a room, and this is one thing I learned from a reel not too long ago, late last year, is that the gentleman was saying that we always talk about spending time with our family, right? It's very important. He was talking about his daughter and how he's there for his daughter, and he's in the real estate space too. But he said, you know, time is one thing, but attention is another. You know what I'm saying? So he said he's been spending time for years with his child, but he realized he was never attentive. Like being there watching a movie while she's watching a little Disney movie about a princess while you on your phone, you're not attentive.
Right.
So you can't even speak to the movie because you weren't there.
Right.
And she knows that you're not there. Right. She knows that you're there physically, and that's cool. Right. But you're not attending to it, right? How many times have you gone to an amusement park or gone to a trampoline park and you're like, oh, I'm just sit here. You go have a That's not attendant. You know what I mean? So the problem with that is people get distracted real quick. Right. And people get entertained by other things real quick. And you don't want that for your family, your significant other, or your children. Yep. Right. And so that's one thing that I had to learn. Now I have to plan in my day that stuff, which the irony of that is I talked to somebody about 2 months ago and they said, you know, that's a problem. I said, why? They said, because now you're putting in your calendar when you're going to make a phone call, when you're going to spend some time with your family. Nobody wants to be on your calendar because now they feel like they're a part of your business. Right. They're not. They're family. Yeah. So that should be organic. And I'm just like, I can't time block without putting my family in. They don't. If I'm time blocking, I have to put the family in the time. Right. It doesn't work like that though. Nobody wants to be on someone's calendar. Right. You know, you don't want a phone call every day at 4:00 because somebody said, well, I don't have no time the rest of the day. So I'm gonna wait till 4:00 to call you every day. Yeah, that's tough. I never really thought about that. I never thought about it either. Cause like, I have the same perspective as you. Like I literally will time block, like call my mom, like tell her you love her. Yeah. You know, because I want to remember to do it. Not only that, but I want to make sure that I'm doing it because I know that, you know, she receives that well and that helps her throughout her day. But at the same time, it's like you said, you know, it's they become part of the business. It's not a regimen. That's now you have to stagger it. So I asked, well, what do I do? They said stagger it. Yeah. You know what I mean? 1 week is Tuesday, next week is Thursday, next week is a Wednesday, next week is a Saturday. So they feel like it's organic. Right. You just don't let them know. And I'm just like, this is too much thinking. Like, I don't have that to do. I got deals to take care of. I can't. But it's a valid point because I feel like if somebody put me on a clock like that, I wouldn't appreciate it because I feel like I don't know. Only doing it because I feel like for somebody like me or somebody like yourself who's putting in 20-hour days, you know what I mean? The fact that you get on my calendar means a lot. There's that too. So everything, I guess, is perspective because like for me, if I have, you know, if you put me on your calendar, that means I'm important enough that you carved out some time in the day. You carved out enough time in your day to do this podcast. So there's some type of value exchange here, right? So even from a family perspective, like I get it, you don't want to be a part of the business, but if you understand, like this is what put food on the table, this is what puts a roof over your head, this is how we get to go on trips, you know, I guess maybe there's a little bit greater level of appreciation there, but I don't know. That's education. Yeah, that's interesting. So it's how you educate the individual. Yeah. If you don't have that conversation, then yes, it'll end up the other way. So yeah, that's a valid point too. You have to educate the individual so that they understand why it's that way. Right. That's an interesting conversation. I never thought about it from the other perspective. This was a seasoned woman that told me this in her 70s, and she was like, "Oh, honey, don't put me on your calendar." And I was just like, she was like, don't. I would, why would, and I'm like, man, I never thought about that. I might have messed that up. Yeah, you know? I never thought about that either. But yeah, man, so I wanted to talk about just like everything that you do within the Black community. Like obviously you're an agent, you're a loan officer. I think I actually want to read this quote off because I found it on your Facebook, but it said, most people are in real estate to make money. I'm in this industry to make a change, starting with education on keeping and building generational wealth, balancing and providing qualitative and quantitative value. I thought that was super powerful. And to just take it a step further, I feel like you niche it down even further into serving your community, the Black community. Obviously, I know I've been a part of a couple of your events. I've seen everything you do on Facebook within the Black community, how strong you are with just the marketing behind it and really the education piece. So just like talk about, you know, where that passion comes from, what that looks like for you on just a current level, a future level, just like dive in however deep you want to dive in. Yeah, so first of all, I appreciate you for peeping game. I'm very, very vocal about it. Unapologetically. So a part of it is I came up in a tough part of town, Genesee and Goodyear in the 90s so that was when bodies were dropping. You know, end of the crack epidemic. A lot of things happening. I was snatched out of there. You know, my mom realized she had to get me out of there. My dad was a Hammond Park at the time, so that was a different lifestyle. She got me out of there, went to North Buffalo for a bit, and then got me out to Tonawanda. Going to Tonawanda, and then still my dad being at that time, his home was on Thornton, so Bailey and Kensington. I had kind of two worlds, right? And I understood one world and I understood another. But it wasn't until after I got out of high school, more so like middle and college, that I recognized why the worlds were different. Because I'm still seeing the same people, but I'm seeing two different lifestyles that they were living, right? Completely different lifestyles. And so I had to kind of like come to my means and understand like why that happened. I'm a why guy. That's why I went to school for psychology. That's why I used to get in trouble when I was little. I would always ask people why. Now, from a challenger standpoint, until you couldn't answer, then it became a challenge. Right. But I like to know why people do what they do and why people are here. You know, why isn't this going the right way? And what I found is like the bottom line is very, very systemic issues that occurred and are still occurring very passively, very quietly, very sneakily, all across the board, but definitely in real estate. And you know, real estate is really the key asset to generational wealth. Right. That's the one thing that in a snap of a finger, it doesn't change value immediately. Right. And it can be passed down. And not just that, but it can provide all along the way, a roof over your head the whole time. Right. And not just that, you know, passive residual income. So for so many reasons, that is the key piece. And when I looked at a lot of my high school classmates from Kenmore West, class of 05, by the time I got married at about 24 years old, 26 years old, they all had homes. A couple of them actually had a second home by that time, whether it was rental property or just left the first house and went into the second house. And then I looked at my friends, colleagues, family even, that weren't in that school, weren't in that neighborhood, and I realized it was a whole different situation. Ownership was a whole different. It was almost like, for my white counterparts, it was almost like rites of passage. Yeah. Like it was, you're going to buy a house, and it wasn't forced. It was just no different how at 16, 17, 18 you get a car. Right. It's kind of natural. You know, 17, 18 you graduate high school. Yeah. It was like that, right? Yeah. It was very similar. You know, kind of in alignment, we say probably marriage and children the same. Like it just kind of happened very systematically, where I found that the other group of people wasn't so much the same, wasn't planned. It was like nothing was ever planned. Life just kind of happened, and I'm like, okay, well, what's the difference? The difference is the dinner table conversations. Like, and I'll say this every time I have the opportunity to say it. In a black household, if you ask your parents, grandparents, big mom, auntie, uncle, how much they make, where they work, you know, do they have a 401k, what's their insurance policy, they'll tell you to stay in the child's place. But in my high school friends, and I know this because they would tell us. Right. I remember when we first talked about stocks in 5th grade, they started teaching us stocks, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. A lot of my classmates knew about stocks at that age because their parents were already in it. Dad's dabbling already, and they already had some things lined up for them, like kiddie stocks. You know what I mean? Like they allowed them to play in that space. And I'm like, man, y'all knew about this a long time ago. But that was because of something that was talked about over the dinner table, right? Yeah. They talked about the trust and the wills. And so I understood the importance of all of that and how the two different ethnic, two different culture, two different races, they were not having the same conversations. Yeah. And so fast forward, you know, as a father of 4, I recognize the importance of me having that conversation with my family. But it would be selfish for me to have that conversation, no information, and not share it amongst others. Yeah. So then my journey became, how do I get it out to the community? How do I get everything that I know and learn whenever, the moment I learn it, how do I get that out? Yeah. Because everyone needs to know this as fast as possible, and each one teach one. So after I started doing some social media things, getting some education out there, I found that people were teaching other people, and it kind of swung back to me. So some good reciprocity there. But it wasn't for reciprocity. Reciprocity was really to build the community as a whole up. Looking at the numbers statistically, only 3 years ago is when I started looking at the actual numbers of home ownership and wealth gaps and all of that. And it's about a 40% wealth gap, but also a 40% home ownership gap across the nation, from whites to blacks. And all in between that is every other ethnic group. Yeah. So at the bottom of the list, we always stand in certain categories.
Yeah.
And those categories are the generational wealth categories that determine where
Right.
you're going to end up and where your family goes. And so my goal became to speak to those things without talking condescending to anyone, without shaming or bashing anyone about what they or their parents or grandparents didn't do. Because what I learned is a lot of it was, again, misinformation. A lot of it was, again, before 68, they couldn't even purchase.
Right.
You know what I mean? So Tana, in the home that my mom's in, her title says that a person of color could not purchase that home. She was born in January 68. So when she was born, she could not own that house. You know, some people are like, oh, that was forever ago. It's not. My mom not even 60.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That was yesterday.
Right.
Right? So, like, we have to understand that home ownership for Black community is actually a rather new thing in the majority of America. And not just that, we couldn't practice real estate.
Right.
So the realtor bylaw said that a person of color could not practice real estate. So not only can we not purchase in certain areas, but you don't have a Drewski there or you don't have a Ryan there
Right.
to help you even
Right.
establish it.
Yeah.
So it was like in 1968, on the day of Dr. King's burial, Lyndon Johnson signed the Fair Housing Law, which allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
But that was brand new. You know what I mean? So you got to take that lasted 60 years and figure out, now you have to unlearn all of the things that wasn't true. You know, all the things that still happen, redlining, blackbusting, steering, all that still happened.
Yeah.
And so now you have, you know, grandparents and parents still telling you about things that happened when they were younger, which isn't necessarily true today, but it was true for them.
Right.
So now I have to correct all of the things that were historical and tell people, here's where we are today.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it happened, but that's not what's going on now. You still got people that won't put money in the bank because they lost $4,000 of money in the bank, right? And it was a lot of money to them back then.
Yeah.
It's like, bank's not doing that anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. It's safe,
Right.
but not to them.
Yeah.
So is that fear factor, right? It's trauma. They're traumatized.
For sure.
It's PTSD. And so I'm just trying to not solve that problem, but create new, what's the word? Create a new,
Or like a new perspective or a new narrative even.
new narrative is the word I was looking for. You have to create a new narrative. You
Yep.
can't keep trying to tell someone that their mom and grandma was wrong. Their dad and uncles their experience was their experience. It's real. That happened. My grandma actually grew up as an indentured servant, right? That's real life.
Yep.
My grandma was born in the early 20s, and she was on a plantation. She used to pick out the lice of the hair of the two young girls on that big house site.
Right.
Right? I can't unlearn that. I can't fix the history, but what I can say is that was then.
Yeah.
Here, not only are we here now, but here's where we're going.
Right.
And what I realize is some people can't see anything past where they are as a veil. My job is to create a pathway for the future, help people see that vision, that mission, that plan, and the course that we're going to take, and bring them along with me.
Yeah, I think that that's the biggest thing that I see as it pertains to the Black community with real estate, and why, in my opinion, part of the reason anyway is why, there is such a huge gap is that, well, one, obviously the financial literacy piece, which part of which we can control, but we couldn't back then, right? But I feel like us as a community get in our own way because of that trauma and that PTSD, and we spend way too much time looking in the rear view and making excuses as to why we can't move forward, when now, like, yes, I understand we should absolutely know where we came from and why, we are here today. But if we spend as much time pulling our ideas and thoughts and resources together to talk about where we're going instead of why we're here in the first place, then we would move a lot quicker towards where we all want to be.
That's a fact.
Right? What do you feel like is the biggest issue or the biggest reason in that wealth gap, in that home ownership gap?
I think that you still have that. This is very mortal, but you still have that era of those who experienced that trauma.
Yeah.
Once you passed, put it like this, anyone that was born 80s and up will have a different story.
Yeah.
Because at that point it's great-grandma, great-great-grandma, and I say grandma because more often than not, the male is no longer in the home. You know, he passed away, right? Especially black male. So that widow has taught her experiences to that generation after her, which in a sense, like that is, you know, we should do that, right? But unfortunately, no one disconnected her experience from the new day's experience. So I think that what happens is as time progresses and those individuals, our elders, are no longer with us to remind us of reasons why they didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think that all we'll see is other people that have done it, right? Because of people like us that are in this industry putting people, you know, very intentionally into places of ownership. You, in a minute, will only see 40, 50-year-olds that own a home and have owned it for 20 years. And now it's like, it's very doable for you because someone else is doing it. You know, life is just full of us not doing things because we never seen anybody else do it.
Yeah.
You know, we only mimic.
Yeah.
So I think that give it 10, 15 years and this next wave goes out, once the baby boomers are gone, I think that you'll see something different. Because honestly, the 50 or 60-year-olds already know, I didn't have a problem opening up a bank account.
Right.
I didn't have a problem getting a loan for a house.
Right.
Right. It was their parents at 80 years old.
Yeah.
Once that sweeps, I think we'll be in a different place. And again, that's where we have the ability to set the narrative. We can change the course. And that is, for me, more my responsibility than just buying and selling.
Right.
It's the education piece.
Yeah. And I think now more so than ever, especially with social media, looking at social media from a positive standpoint, there are people who look like you and I who are advocates for financial literacy and ownership and what have you. You have like Earn Your Leisure. You have rappers, you have athletes who are glorifying ownership and investing, and you didn't have that before. For one, we didn't have the platform with social media like we do now, where you can't contain our freedom of speech.
Getting out.
Right. So it's getting out, and now I think it's becoming more popular, and people are making it like hip to invest and to buy a home and to flip a home and take the money that you're making and go put it in real estate or Bitcoin or what have you. And I was going to ask, like, if you felt that we were moving in a positive direction. I think you already kind of answered that. If you'd like to speak more on that, you know. About
you mentioned invest, and I every year I get a few people from the town that ask me if I'm going to invest fest. My answer is always no. It goes back to that ocean. I get there, I might go crazy. I might come back with 10 different LLCs ready to get going or something. So you have to have a focus. And I think I totally agree with you that we're in a position again to take control. To create a new narrative, and only show the positive of that, glorify that positive of ownership and investing. And so, even to something like InvestFest, that didn't exist until a handful of years ago.
Right.
And now look at that. I even got 30, 40, 50,000 people that show up.
Yeah.
And we lose like some of our local entrepreneurs to that event often every year. Every time it comes, there's about 20, 30 people from Buffalo that go out that I know, which means there's probably 100 people, right? And that's a beautiful thing, because where did you see 100 people go anywhere to learn about how to build their wealth? Right. So absolutely, social media is a huge piece, and just people being more comfortable with exposing how they're making things happen. Yeah. People have hidden how for so long.
Been gatekeeping,
and I always tell people, don't bring me near the gate, because I'm gonna take the hinges off and knock it out. And then I'm gonna bring the people in. And so literally, I think I'm not getting invites to certain things because they're trying to keep it that way. They know not to invite me. You give me a one-off invite, I'm bringing 5 with me. Right. I apologize when I get there. Yeah. Because that's just how I believe it needs to be. That's the only way to progress.
Yeah. That's powerful. So talk about just like what you're doing now. Like, I know we just did the event. You do a lot of first-time home buyer stuff, but like, what are you doing out there for people of color, really just anybody to come and get educated? Like, it's not even just for people of color. I know that's the target, but even at our event, there was white people there was black people, there was all types of different people. So
yeah, so the cool part about it is what I learned and I was never fearful to take this leap of being very intentional about black. But what I learned is that you actually get a lot of love from other people when you're intentional about your own.
100%.
Because they like, oh, you're a real one. Like, we already had that over here. We've been good. Right. But we all know that y'all haven't. Right. So we were looking for a you. Yeah. And so now I get phone calls from, legislators. I get phone calls from people from our association, that says, we want you to come in. And I'm a why guy, right? Yeah. So instead of just like being happy to do it, I'm asking why. Well, why? Right. Am I a token? Like, just let me know that.
Right.
I don't mind being a token because I still got in the room.
Right.
I'll take a seat at the table if I'm a token. Because whatever I learn here, I'm gonna go back and tell. Right. So I don't have a problem with that. But the why is typically because they're like, look, you're an advocate, right? And we don't have anyone advocating for this, and we're finding that the lack that we have is because y'all not in place. Yeah. So we need you to get your people in place so that we all can, and that's how the world is. The world can't survive without Black people doing well too. Right. The world always struggles when Black people take an L. And so I learned that if I can just position myself to be the one that gets called for anything Black wealth related, then, I can progress everyone. And again, there's other communities that see that. Not to name any particular ones, but there's 2 major communities that have been reaching out to me that I've been working with quietly so far that have asked me to bring my people in and work my people on because it's going to directly affect how they move. Right. Right. And so will it kick back later on to something weird? It might, right? But at the same time, they're leap years ahead. So I just need to learn how you got to the moon so I can get, at least into the sky. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like I can't even get off the ground right now. Right. So I'm learning from other people, and the ideal is now to intentionally take the different communities and take the different what do you want to call it? Take the different avatars of individuals and strategically put them out there. So now I'm learning, okay, here are the people that are ready for this. Here are the people that are ready for this. We have to have events around that, right? And it coming from a holistic approach. So we're not just talking about first-time home buyers. We're talking about building. We're talking about equity. We're talking about DSCR loans. We're talking about the things that they just aren't familiar with. Yeah. Because not everybody needs to buy a house. A lot of people actually already own a home, especially when you're talking to certain types of people. I found that like 60% of the people in the one group that I had already owned a home. So it wasn't a first-time home buyer event. The conversation pivoted into, all right, well, you own a home. How long you own a home? Everyone owned a home more than 8 years in that event. Like, I got equity.
Talking about equity plays.
Now we're talking about liens and loans. Now we're talking about how to leverage that, how to scale. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we're talking about partnering. Like how the 3 of y'all partner. Y'all got $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. How do y'all partner for a development project that I'm doing or that she wants to do? And so I got a text message today. One of the individuals from that very room said, let's meet at City Hall on Friday. I said, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. She said, me and my partners will be there. So they already put the entity together. They're starting because they already had land. She already had land that she had identified. Now she wants to grab that land now that she got her partners. And we're building a capital stack now with one of the CDFIs. And now they're talking about developing. These is 4 women that ain't have any idea in mind what to do. She just happened to own this land next door. And she's like, well, I want to buy it and fence it in. Now, how about you buy it and build a multi-unit on it? So now they're planning to build with their equity. But if I didn't have that conversation, they would have never known that. So like I said, it's levels that I'm learning. And it's very important for me to be able to kind of strategically be in certain rooms at certain times. And I'm learning the political space now of it all. That's a very unique space. Yeah. So I'm tying in the real estate to politics. So you're going to start seeing a lot more of that. I'm going to lobby day in a couple of weeks, week and a half, over in Albany, because that's where the decisions are being made. And if we're not in the room where the decisions are being made, we always just have to reap whatever was made in that room. And when I go to these rooms, I realize none of us were there. Yeah. And that's why things are happening. And like I said, sometimes it's sometimes it's intentional, systematic. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people just make decisions without you. Right. Because you wasn't in the room. Yeah. No one thought, well, you forgot about them. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you're not in the room, you don't have a voice. So that's why I said my goal now is to become the voice of Black real estate wealth and just be able to be the one that get called on for those things. And I'm doing that through partnerships. So, through the churches where predominantly Black people are on Sunday morning, through the Divine Nine, which, at least if we talk Southeast, that's predominantly where the collegiate people went. They were all in frats and sororities, right? So just using those different relationships that we're already in those rooms with those individuals already doing wealthy for them. So they're doing well already. Now, how do I get them on? Now I can get them up and it's not a struggle. Now the people at the bottom, we have to build out another system for those people. Yeah. And there are systems for that right now. So I've learned to partner with a couple organizations. You mentioned, Wealthy People Talking Big. So John Hope Bryant, he's talking a lot right now, and he's a huge advocate of Black wealth. He started Operation Hope 2 years ago. It actually piloted out of the Buffalo. And so I'm pushing that, free financial and credit well-being coaches there. There's no reason not to. Like you said, excuses now. Yeah. Because the stuff that you had issues with have services for free. Right. So now what's the problem? Yeah. So like I said, I try not to talk in the condescending manner with people, but
sometimes you gotta give it to them real.
I do, and that's when the Drewski side comes out, and people are like, "Oh, that's what it is." I'm sorry, it is what it is. Yeah. You came to me wanting help. This is the help. The help is give it to you real and raw. Yeah, it's you.
No, I think people need that. Especially today, it's almost like it's frowned upon to give it to somebody real at times, and we're so nice, and we want everybody to be happy, and mental health is such a big thing, which it should be. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but there's also a time and a place where sometimes you just gotta give it to me straight because that's what I need to hear, and it's not supposed to be nice. Like, hey man, stop spending $20 a day on Tim Hortons and Burger King and start putting this away into a stock or into a bank account so that you can save up to buy a home. You waste some money, and I think now those conversations are becoming more and more relevant and more they're happening more and more frequent, which is good. But people like you who you're really pushing the narrative, and I have a lot of respect for that. Like I watch you move just from what I can see on social media and the limited conversations that we do have. You're always working on something. You're always rubbing shoulders with somebody who's making decisions, and I think that's what's, from my perspective, what's most dope about you and your superpower is you're a master networker, and you know how to maneuver to get things done. And I have a lot of respect for that, because that's how I am. I like to rub shoulders with the right people, because at the end of the day, I want all my people to win, and I can't push the narrative the way that I want to if I'm not around the people who are making the decisions.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
And I think it's super dope what you're doing. But yeah, not to get too far off topic, excuse me, but what's we'll wrap this up, but what's next for Andrew Scott? I know you doing a million things for the community, which you just alluded to, but what's next for you?
There is no me. That's another part of, that's one of the L's that you take. You remove the me from the situation. It's a us or it's a we. Sometimes it's a them, it's a they. But there is no me. There isn't. And that's the sad part about it, right? Yeah. Because you lose yourself in the service. Sometimes you just have to be okay with that. Yeah. And that might just be what your life is. Everyone's like, oh, you should still, when you're calling, you stay right there. And if that means that I lose myself to give and to grow, then that's the legacy. The legacy trumps all at that point. Does that mean that people behind me lose? That might mean that. But if a few lose and everyone else wins, that's the bigger picture. So for me, the service that I'm providing to the community, for those who appreciate it, understand and get it. I think that some people won't for a long time. When we look at some of our, we would say Black leaders, I think that at the moment they didn't even realize who they were dealing with, who they had in front of them, until they were gone. Now they're martyrs. It's like, they didn't have to be that way. If you recognize what they was trying to do, you could have made plays better and faster, could be more effective and efficient. And so that's why I have to actually say what I'm trying to do versus do it on low key, No. I'm trying to be the voice of Black real estate for this community. That's it. If I say that, then no one can ever be like, oh, I just realized what he was. No. I told you what I was doing. And then that just opens up a lot of things for me, because if they're looking for it, I'm there for it. And if that's how I go out, being a servant to the community, then I'm not doing anything different than what my big brother was. That's what he was when he got sent here. He is here, in and out of here 33 years. But in his time that he was here, that's all he did. He served. He gave, he taught, So I think that's my calling. So I don't really consider what's left for me at the end of the day. Yeah, there's a burnout that can happen. There's a crash that can happen. But I just think that we all do that anyways. Yeah. You can crash being all about yourself, right? You so in your own self, you burned all the bridges. Yeah. You're all by yourself. Nobody wants to deal with you. Yeah. You hooked on this and stuck on that and, addicted to this. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'd rather go the route of servitude and saying I put it all on the line for my community because that's who needed me. Not to say that no other community matters, but only one community struggle. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm coming for that. And that's who I am. So that's why you see me being able to do things at a high level, because that's all I'm concerned about. It's that one focus.
I don't want you to drop my mic, but that was the mic drop right there. Nah, man, that's amazing. I guess to wrap it up, I did see you label yourself as a food connoisseur. We are in Buffalo, New York. So who's got the best wings in Buffalo?
I never answer those questions.
You can't take the easy way out.
I never did. No, I was.
All right, give me your top three.
My top three?
Yeah.
It depends on what you're looking for.
What are you looking for? Wings. I don't want to talk about nobody else.
So like if I want, it depends on what kind of wing I want, right? Yeah. So like I like Kelly's Corner.
Okay.
But that's not a buffalo wing. It's his own wing with its own sauce.
Yeah.
Gabriel's Gate. If I want big wings, they got good big wings. I like Barbells.
Yeah.
Right? It depends on what type of wing that I want.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking like specialty wing. I'm talking about if I want a big oversized wing with a lot of meat, that's one thing.
Yeah.
If I want a wing that I just know is going to be crispy and cracked, that's another thing. What you'll find about food, these versus like food connoisseurs, is that we move at a higher level of understanding of the food and the palate. And you probably never really find a real food connoisseur tell you a favorite anything really, because it depends on what. It's so specific.
Yeah,
it's so specific. I was a food critic for food judge for the Taste of Buffalo for 2 years.
For real?
Yeah, 18 and 19.
That's fine.
I have my own food page following, Drewski Eats.
I did check
for 3 years. Yeah. And I had to get serious about real estate. I was spending like $12,000-$13,000 a year on food. Very, very adamant and serious about it. I don't play with my food, man. And even to the point where I won't eat all day until I know I got what I want.
Yeah.
I'm completely okay with that. But yeah, people used to ask me all the time, what's the best? And I'm like, I can't answer that question.
All right, what's the word? The best kept secret? Like what's a hidden gem? Give me a hidden gem restaurant in Buffalo.
For what type of food?
Any type, it don't matter. Just a slept on restaurant.
Slept on and hidden is two different things.
All right,
I would say here you go. I'm gonna give you a junk because it's Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you I think Raimundo's is very well slept on.
I've never been there.
That's the problem. So Raimundo's, go to Raimundo's and get a steak hoagie.
Okay.
All right. Get it their way on their bread. And also at the same time, get their gold wings. And you're gonna be like, dang, how did I make sure you get their blue cheese?
Yeah.
You're gonna be like, how did I not know? It's not a hidden gem, it's there, but it's slept on. People don't really understand. They steak pizza too. Steak hoagie, steak pizza, and their gold wings. And then I would say a hidden one is definitely man, I could picture it. It's so hidden that I could picture it and I can't think of it. I want to say it's on Connecticut. It's a higher end spot. And the windows are blacked out. It's no big sign. I want to say there's like a lion logo on the top. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
It's one of those. Man, it's right there. I'm gonna remember as soon as the podcast is over. But Buffalo has a ton of holes in the walls that have amazing food.
For sure.
Sticky floors, you know what I mean? Dirty countertop.
The best spots.
That's the spot. Those greasy spots.
Throw a little elbow grease on it.
Yeah, and that's why I started the food following.
Yeah.
Because Yelp and Google, they're not going to give you that.
For sure.
People are paying to be on top, and it's commercialized. That's not the place. If you want to come to Buffalo, that was my page. That's the purpose of the page was if you want to come to this town, I'm gonna give you the little holes in the walls. I'm gonna give you the places that just started.
Yeah.
You're not gonna know otherwise.
Yeah, every time I go somewhere like to another city, I always try and find a local. Because you can get on TikTok or you can get on Google or wherever and search. And like you said, people are paying for ads. And you never find the best of the best there. But you talk to a local, somebody a little dirty, not somebody you might want to approach. You talk to them, they always got the spots. So
I do the same thing.
But nah, man, I think that's all I wanted to cover. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day for coming and chopping it up. And yeah, man, that's all I got.
Thank you for recognizing.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a part of what I've been doing. Absolutely. Looking forward to doing more with you.
Likewise.
All right,
bro.
thanks, man.